Hi, everyone. Uh, Today, I want to talk, and we're going to be talking a lot about this over the next couple of days: good debt, bad debt. And it is something that, we can't just finish it in one conversation and just say, this is the way it's got to be done. Everybody's got different types of debt, but there's a good debt and there's a bad debt. So I'm going to try and explain it a little bit differently. So that it makes it much easier to understand. So, a good debt is, let's say you need to borrow some money, that you want to expand your business. Maybe you're planning to employ more people. You might decide you want to buy a property. So those are good debts, if you've also given it some thought. So it's always important to understand how you're going to invest this money and that. So those are good debts. Now, your bad debt is, going to buy motor cars. Bad debt, because you know what, a motor car, you take it off the showroom floor, it's already lost value. Credit cards, bad debt. If you don't know how to use a credit card, it can be a killer. Interest rates are extremely high. You're struggling, and you want to buy something, so you end up going to these money lenders at very high interest rates, and these are bad debt. Now, when you actually looking at good debt, can also turn into bad debt if you don't give it some good thought, because you can decide to go and invest money into your business and you haven't given it some good thought, and all of a sudden that bad it automatically becomes bad debt. So we've gone from good debt to bad debt. So I always say you need to give it some thought and understand and do your homework. But you've got to know the difference between good debt and bad debt. The other thing is that, and we see this all the time. People seem to cut their expenses. It's not a bad idea to cut expenses, but at the end of the day, what happens when you've cut everything to the bone and you are still not making it? It boils down to one thing: your income isn't enough. And it's essential to try and increase your income, because when you go down that road and say cut, and you're not working on increasing your income, you're going to get to realize, I still can't make it. So you need to take that into consideration. It's good to cut debt and it's good to cut unnecessary expenses, but be careful that if you don't increase your income, you're going to end up cutting, and you're still not going to make it at the end of the day. Now, it's a very big problem. Everybody seems to want to always drive nice motor cars, go out all the time. It's funny. I go out on a Friday night, and I see all the restaurants are full. And I'm saying to myself, how many of these people can actually afford to go and spend the amount of money that they are spending tonight? Because why? They're buying it on plastic, on credit cards. And I've always said, if you go to a supermarket and you end up drawing the cash to actually pay for the stuff, you're going to think twice, how many of that stuff is actually necessary. But I've seen it. I always love to watch people's trolleys and that, and I see the chocolates and I see the cold drinks and I see all the luxury lines, because they just hand out their credit card and they swipe it. And what always seems to surprise me is that how many people I actually see putting their groceries on budget. Now, that cannot be good debt. I mean, think of it. I mean, you're going to put it over 3 months, which that food's going to be finished within the next 2-3 weeks, maybe even the next week, and you want to pay it over 2-3 months. So that's what I'm actually trying to say. So I'm going to give you a different example, of ways to, you want to buy a nice car, but really, does that actually, that motor car, you only going to spend that extra hour, 2 hours, if you're that much a day? But what is the financial burden on you? And that is what you need to be asking yourself. Good debt, bad debt. And you need to be asking yourself that all the time. Now, one suggestion that I can actually, and it's taken me many times out of trouble. And don't forget, I'm just like you. I'm just a person. I mean, I make decisions and sometimes they are wrong. I do investments in businesses and they don't turn out to be successful. And, I'm a human being and I can do the best I can, but certain things are out of my control, like I have no control over all of a sudden somebody ends up bringing a cheaper product, or for instance a political situation happens and people are just feeling, we need to hold back on money. So there are many reasons why you can try and invest in a business and a couple of months later things aren't going well. So that's why I always try to say, just give it some thought. Now, what I actually say, and try to maybe do this, is to take all your debt and write it all down. And it's important that you understand all your debt. It's essential. And if you owe, for argument's sakes, 5,942 rand, don't make it 6,000. Write it to the exact cent so that you know what is the exact amount of money that you owe. Now, next to it, also write what is it costing you in interest. So obviously, you need to start looking at the most expensive interest and how you're going to actually try to save more money. But there is another thing that can also be troubling you, and that's called psychological debt. Now, you could end up owing money to a family member, or to a friend, or to somebody who's harassing you a lot for that money. Sometimes it can actually be no interest or very little interest, but that is the one that is psychologically affecting you the most. And I believe at times you need to pay those ones first, because it's always going to bother you. So if you've got a family member that you're owing money, maybe pay them so that you feel comfortable when you actually see them, or a friend. Maybe you borrowed from a very small business guy that can't afford to carry you, and he's not going to leave you alone. So he keeps on phoning you and saying to you, listen, I need that money. So I know the logic is always to pay where you're paying the most amount of interest, but you do get debt that psychologically eats you up. So sometimes it's actually better to tackle those ones so that you can take some pressure off yourself. It is important to understand your debt, to look at it. Now, another example when you look at sometimes at taking good debt is to say to yourself, what can I do to pay that debt off quicker? So let's say, for instance, you are going to take this loan over the next 2 years. Try to see what you can do to make it over the next year and a half. Now, I see it all the time. People are moaning and groaning all the time that they owe money and the debt is eating them up. But you know what? Come Friday, everything comes to a standstill. So they're only going to start worrying about it on Monday, because the majority of those telephone calls, or what they don't have to think about the debt, is only actually going to start on Monday. That isn't how you're actually going to get your debt sorted out. Because if you look at your home loans, if you pay in an extra 5%, 2%, it brings down years on your bond. It's the same as debt. So if you've gone and you've borrowed maybe money and you're working for a salary, try to see what you could do, maybe at your job, to put in extra hours so that you can concentrate on that. If you can't, try to find something else that you can do. Maybe you're good with your hands and you can do repairs, or you can do some side jobs over weekends so that you can pay towards that debt and bring that debt down faster. But most people, when they get that debt, they just carry on as life as normal. And that is where the biggest mistake comes. You need to try to put in something extra so you can bring down that debt. That is why we have good debt, we have bad debt. And a lot of the times is that people just say, you know what, I don't know what to do, and I just accept the situation as it. That's the wrong attitude, because you know what, if you decide that you go and look for some extra work, or you try to do a part-time job, or you try to put in extra hours in your business, then at the end of the day, you will concentrate on that debt coming down. Sometimes as well, if you owe, say for instance, 20 different people, it might be clothing accounts, credit cards, it might be, what can I say, house loans, and some other debts and that. Sometimes it's nice to actually write off the list. Take a small amount, write it off, so that that amount of people become less and less. So put yourself a goal down. Understand your debt. The more you understand it, the more you're going to think about it, the more you're actually going to think before you actually want to spend. And at the end of the day, when you look at that debt, it makes you feel guilty to throw away unnecessary money. I see it all the time at the supermarkets. I look at those trolleys and I say to myself, you know what? 1/3 of that stuff sometimes can be put back. But that is the problem. They take it on credit cards because they don't feel it. But you will have to pay sooner or later. You will have to pay for that debt. Understand good debt. Understand what bad debt is. You go and get, for instance, a student loan. I'm going to give you an example as a student loan. That is a good debt, because as long as you're going to continue to do your studies and that, it is a good investment. You're investing in yourself so that you can go and study, so that you can have a job. You want to buy yourself a house, and we're going to talk about this over the next couple of days. And if you can afford it and the numbers do make sense, yes, it is a good investment. But what are you doing extra to try and bring down that debt? That's the ultimate question. Now, can you put in an extra hour a day? Can you put in an extra 2 hours a day? Do you have to stop on a Friday? So let's just say, for instance, you work at a job and your boss doesn't want to give you extra work and that, and you come to the end of the day on a Friday. Does that mean that you can't do anything on a Saturday or Sunday? There are many things. I look at people in the neighborhoods walking people's dogs. I see some people that are good with their hands and they're going to do repairs at people's houses. There are so many things. Look at what you can go and do, because that extra money that you're putting in does bring your debt down. Don't spend your money on things that you don't need. I know it's always nice to drive nice motor cars, to wear nice clothes. It's always nice, those things. But the question is, can you afford it? Sometimes the debt can be overwhelming and you feel, you know what, I can do nothing about it, so I'm just going to carry on. You're going to have to pay it sooner or later. So you can ignore it as much as you want. And a lot of people say, you know what, the bank's only going to phone me in a month's time, or somebody's only going to ask me because I only have to pay my payment in a month's time. Wrong attitude. With an attitude like that, you're never going to succeed. So what I'm saying is, look at good debt, look at bad debt. Understand, when you're going to make debt, does it make sense? Have you given it some thought on what are the consequences? Because sometimes good debt can turn into bad debt because you haven't given it a lot of thought. So give it some thought before you swipe that credit card, before you buy that motor car, before you go to those money lenders that charge so much money, those SMSs that you get constantly from so many different people. Yeah, we're going to offer you credit. We're going to offer you this over 2 years, 3 years and that. You got to ask yourself is this good debt or is it bad debt? Ask yourself. Before you make that debt, write down, understand your expenses at that time, and ask yourself, what is this new debt going to do to me? You need to know your numbers. Don't round off your figures. Understand them to the cent. The more you understand your debt, the more you're going to be able to focus on bettering yourself. Good debt, bad debt. Good debt, bad debt. Good debt, bad debt. Always ask yourself before you make debt, is it good debt or bad debt? Have you given it thought? Are you comfortable with the decision that you're going to make? The better you understand it, the more questions you ask yourself, the more thought you're putting into it, the better the decision is going to be at the end of the day. And remember, you can cut your expenses. Not a bad idea, but the majority can cut. If your income does not grow, you are still in trouble. 9 out of 10, it's about your income. Yes, if you've made mistakes and you've overspent, you learn from it, you get back onto your feet, and you say to yourself, good debt, bad debt, good debt, bad debt, good debt, bad debt. Always ask that question. We are going to talk over the next couple of days. We will talk more about good debts and bad debts and going to buy, a property or, going to buy that motor car. But I'm seeing so many people that do not respect their debt. If you do not respect the debt, how are you ever going to pay it off? They don't even know how much they owe. When you don't even know how much you owe, then what is the game plan to settle that debt? The debt never disappears. It's there. Remember, good debt, bad debt. Ask yourself that. Write all your debt down. Doesn't matter if there's certain debt that has no interest, but psychologically it's affecting you. You cannot go and see the people. You don't know what to say. Tackle those ones first so that you can get that pressure off you. And you need to be able to tick off the list, and you will see that you will feel so much better as you go along. So remember, good debt, bad debt. Cheers. Thanks.